Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, TNG, Thine Own Self. Thine Own Self. Know thine own self, or know our own self. Get to know us. Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Checked Before. Spelled just like it sounds. Lots of fun stuff going on there. Lots of fun memeing. If you belong to any of the other Star Trek meme things on Facebook or any of the social media, I put us right up there with them. It's a lot of fun. We poke a lot of fun at ourselves at Star Trek. Maybe at you. Also, shake it up out there. Tell us what you think of the episodes, our episodes, the episodes we're talking about. It's All Been Trekked Before on Facebook. Now, let's get back to knowing thine own self on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Regular hosts are here. This is Jimmy-Jerome.
This is Stephen.
I threw you off, Stephen. I'm sorry. I usually let you say your name first before I introduce myself. We have a special guest here with us today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Jeffrey, and I have a YouTube channel called Metatrek.
Metatrek, does that have to do with Star Trek?
Yes, it does. Yep. It's sort of, it's all about the original Star Trek series, the original movies, and TNG. I do a little bit of Voyager and Deep Space Nine, but very little of that. And mostly focused on the original series, though.
All right.
Is it safe to say that's your favorite?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Yep.
Steven's a big original series fan.
Me too.
Personally, I'm DS9's my favorite, but Next Gen is a close original series is a close second. And almost being done watching Next Gen, that has not changed my opinion. I think original is better than Next Gen for sure.
All right.
So tell us a little bit about Metatrek. You said you covered stuff. What do you mean by covered? Do you cover the episodes or do you cover general topics?
More like general topics, but I go into things like archetypal analysis of some of the characters, and I do symbolic readings of some of the episodes, or even some of the props and all that. Wherever I see something that I think is interesting and would like to share, that's what I usually end up focusing on. Probably my most popular videos have been my comparison videos, where I compare original series episodes to like one of the movies. The first one I did of that was comparing Balance of Terror with The Wrath of Khan. I noticed similarities, and then as I looked more into it, I just kept finding more and more things in common. So I did a video on that, and did a video with Star Trek 3, the Search for Spock, comparing it with 11001001. There were a lot of connections between that I was surprised to find. And I've done about half my videos now are shorts, and the shorts I've been taking a little different approach. I've been kind of revealing hidden aspects of like the original Star Trek series. My most popular video ever was a video I did on the Skolosian message. It was an episode called A Week of an Eye.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole bunch of dialogue that's sped up so fast you can't understand any of it. Well, I slowed that down and discovered they actually have additional lines of dialogue. So I thought that was kind of cool. Did a video on that, and that really exploded for me. And did a few more of those too, different things. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been into.
I almost weekly reference Balance of Terror on this podcast, so
well, there you go.
That's perfect.
One of Steven's favorites.
Yeah.
Beat you to the punch.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Sounds like you're going to be doing some deeper analysis than we're used to, so we'll try to keep up with you. But that's
Right.
I already made myself a note. I want to check out that Star Trek 3 with the 1001 episode, because that sounds I can't Balance of Terror and Wrath of Khan. I see that. I'm not sure I see the other, so I'm really interested to check out your video and see what you've got to say about it. So
Yeah,
I will do that.
All right. Yep. I look forward to hearing what you think of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here tonight to talk about the Next Generation episode, Thine Own Self, which you had said was an episode that particularly appealed to you. But before we get into why exactly, what's your first impression of the episode on this watch? What stood out to you? Good, bad, just general?
Well, it still was a really good episode. I felt it held up. It was just as good as it was when I first seen it back in, I think 93 was maybe when this one came out. And I've seen it a few times in between.
February 94.
94. Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, I felt like it it held up really well. I like the aesthetic of it. I even liked how they had apparently they used a fog machine or something, because some of the scenes it was real hazy, and I liked the atmosphere that they created for it. The costuming and the Renaissance village look they had, I think it very visually appealing.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate that you're here for this episode because I felt like it's Miri meets the Paradise Syndrome. Neither of which, are our favorite episodes. I think it might be better than either of those. Not this side of Paradise Syndrome, yes, because there's amnesia involved. He gets kind of accepted into the group and all that kind of stuff. And I wrote down, how often amnesia is it drives the entire episodes.
In 90s television,
where it's like, and it's like, do androids get amnesia? Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering
apparently.
that too.
So overall, I thought the B story was interesting. I'm not sure if I loved it. I thought the A story, again, I think it's low praise to say it's better than Miri, a combination of Miri and Paradise Syndrome. But I think our friends I'll just very quickly, my favorite Tumblr site, Fashion It So, they also mentioned that, hey, we're going to the Renaissance Fair. So they also had a lot of comments about all the garb going on. But I thought it was all right. Yeah, overall, I guess it'd be my first impression. Yeah, but a lot of callbacks and stuff. And I thought better than, I'd say it's better than a lot of the general episodes where we land on a planet and it's set in this kind of place and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
I liked this episode. I think there are some major plot holes in terms of logistics of, again, the android and the memory loss. I think there were some weaknesses there that I would have liked to have had explained better. But in general, season 7 has been kind of a disappointment. And I think this is going to be a higher up episode for us in season 7. In a previous season, it might have been a little high in the middle, but a little higher end of the middle, because there's some really good character development in this episode. I thought Data's plot was interesting. I really liked Troy's plot. I liked the Troy and Crusher scene at the beginning a lot. We'll talk about that until I didn't. But the plot holes, like I said, for season 7, I think this has been a pretty decent episode. So I'm pretty happy with it overall. We start out with a scene of Troy and Crusher on the bridge, as I referenced, where Crusher is in command because she likes to take command every once in a while at night.
Yeah.
And Troy's returning from a 3-day school reunion.
Yeah, there's all this stuff dropped, and I thought in a better way, lots of times we talk about the exposition dump, but it's like, oh, it's Crusher log. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm paying a little more attention. 2, it was a weird upshot of the Enterprise. It came up, which not in a dirty way. It was just an upshot rather than, the usual we see. The reference to Troy's shuttle, which I didn't know she had her own shuttle.
I don't think she has her own shuttle.
Yeah, but she talked about it like it was. And then Data is on assignment, as if he's a missing news anchor taking the night off. So I thought that was just a nice little, I just set up the whole episode for you, and you don't even know I did. And now I'm talking to Troy about our class reunion. So I thought that was actually I think what I liked best about the scene is it seemed like it was more character development for Crusher in 3 minutes than we've had in 7 years.
Yep. We got to actually see her character, which I really liked, and hear about her desires and career aspirations and just her personality in a way we never have. And that backstory of, I don't need a rank to be the chief medical officer. I can be chief medical officer as a lieutenant commander, but 8 years ago, I wanted to stretch myself a little, and this is what I chose. And I think it really sets up nicely where we go with Beverly. And I know Stephen hasn't seen it yet. I don't know about you, but in Star Trek Picard, where we go with Beverly down the road. So I liked this. Sets up a bit of the series finale a little bit too.
I thought
where
so
we
too.
Where we go from there. Yeah.
With her being... Also too, it's funny you mentioned more character development in 3 minutes than in the whole series, and that I think mainly had to do with the fact that Patrick Stewart wasn't available for most of this episode because he was filming A Christmas Carol. Yeah. And he had one line in one scene at the end of the episode. So that's why we get the captain's log with Beverly Crusher and her scenes at the beginning. I also felt it was a good way to sort of lean into Troy wanting to get a promotion, and so that was nice double foreshadowing the episode and foreshadowing some of the stuff that's going to happen in all good things.
I totally agree with you. I'd say my only regret that this became a Troy episode instead of a Crusher episode and that subplot is we've got Troy development in the past, whereas we don't get Crusher development. They've always been better to Troy than Crusher. And so my alternate episode, sometimes we pitch an alternate episode, was I really like that this was a Crusher story if we reversed it. If Troy was the one who already had her command training because of the events of 2 years ago, and now Crusher decided to. I really liked the Troy-Riker interaction overall, and we'll talk about some specific scenes, and I always like their dynamic. And we wouldn't have got that with Crusher. Maybe it could have been a Crusher Picard story. That would have been cool. But yeah, it's just we've got Troy before. We never get Crusher. So teasing me with Crusher and then not giving me Crusher was a little disappointing, especially so close on the heels of that god-awful Sub Rosa episode. It's just cruel.
Yeah.
Our friends at Passionate So also noted that it passed the Bechdel test as it did. So good job there, TNG. They referenced night shifts somewhere in that conversation, I think.
Yeah, because Data usually takes the night shift, but Crusher was taking it because Data wasn't there.
Yeah. I know we've talked about that, but like, is the day shift when everything happened? I guess I've never been on an aircraft carrier either, so I don't know.
How many alien vessels only ever approach during the day? So.
So is Data on the bridge all the time then? Because he's always there when everyone else is there. And he takes...
he's going to spend some time with Spot in his quarters.
Yeah.
And painting and playing a violin. But yeah, I wouldn't think he needs sleep. So we got... Speaking of Data, we then are introduced to Data's plot, which I think Stephen's right in calling it the A plot, even though it didn't feel as much A and B as like two separate A plots, but Data's plot was bigger. Yeah. So we'll call it the A. So we got the damaged Data with his radioactive case, and nobody understands what radioactive means, because I guess if Data can't tell you and the civilization isn't advanced enough to know with their Elizabethan, Shakespearean, Renaissance festival-y costumes. Yeah, it definitely felt like they were saving the costume budget by raiding the studio's closet this episode.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah, apparently they had budgeting problems, and that's why they actually had to include the B plot in the episode, which I wanted to mention was actually originally going to be in the episode Liaisons, which you guys probably covered a few months ago, I would imagine. But they decided to forego that, the Troy taking her tests for her promotion, because they wanted something that would be a little more connected to Picard's A plot in that episode. So they saved it for this one. And they had to use it here because they had budgeting issues, so they couldn't, I guess, spend as much time on the planet as we all may have liked them to.
Saving up that budget for the series finale, I would hope.
Most likely, yeah.
And the main house we saw in this episode was definitely a redress of the Sub Rosa house, I'm pretty sure. So,
oh yeah, it definitely looked.
The main town square was a redress of the town square we always get.
Yep. And they use it about 3 more times, too. Even in Deep Space Nine, they pull it back out again and use it in one of those episodes.
Yeah, DS9, I know, reused a lot of next-gen stuff. Voyager less so, even though they still use their share of it.
Mm-hmm.
So after we see Data's plot, which somehow an android lost its memory, some of its memory, not all of its memory, because it can understand words and concepts and science, but not personal memories, which makes more sense to the human brain to the android brain in my mind, although I don't know how the positronic network works. So,
and somewhere in there, they say that, I wrote this down, the mountains are over 200 Sultans from here.
Yes. I like that.
I did too, because I was like, okay, I like a different unit of measurement.
So we have another scene with Troy back on the Enterprise. Riker's playing his trombone. God, that's such a charming scene. The dynamic between them. We just get teased so much with the two of them through this series of what their relationship is. Clearly, it's very close. I heard ribbing him that you're communicating via trombone is less confusing than when you're talking. It's hilarious.
She cuts it the right way that it makes it fun and not like, this guy's a weirdo. Although, again, to our friends at Fashion, so they said, you know what? The woman who was doing this review was like, I love Riker as much as an ex-girl, but it seems like he'd be a lot to date. Just so And then she was like, but that beard. So, but yeah, because I was like, yeah, it was fun, and Riker knows how to party. And of course, his door is always open, just like every other one on the Enterprise. So,
No luck.
well, and then do they get into the conversation here about he's gonna? Oh yeah, I'm as first officer. I'll be the one judging your performance. I feel like
Major conflict of interest.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
I get if he's normally the one, and that makes a lot of sense. But in
Right.
this case, he should be conflicted out, and Picard should be the one giving her the test.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that explains that. When we realized that Patrick Stewart wasn't available, I guess that explains it. But I had the same reaction at the end of the episode. I'm like, has Picard been missing the whole time? And I'm like, I didn't go back and check, but I'm like, I was like, did he direct it? But then I read also that no, Chris,
Just a Winrich Colby, one of our regulars.
That's-
Yeah, I had a line at the very end of my notes about he's just standing there not talking. What's Picard even doing in this scene? Did he have a line this whole episode? But as our your friend pointed out, he had one.
It's probably so you could get paid. Yeah,
It's true.
Get
Not
at
wrong.
least his SAG minimum, probably. You know what? Too, it could have been, as I mentioned, that those scenes were written for another episode.
Mhm.
Liaisons where Picard wasn't available there either, so it might have been a hangover from that.
Mm.
He was he marooned on a planet with some strange woman, and
yeah.
yep,
The here. I can't. Ilarian.
yeah.
We go back to Data at this point, and apparently his breath does not have a smell, which is an interesting tidbit. It makes sense,
Yeah.
but interesting note. And we're introduced to one of the aliens, played by Ronnie Claire Edwards. She plays Talor. She's best known for, according to IMDb, the Deadpool 1988 film, The Waltons, for 107 episodes, where she played Cora Beth Godsey. That's where I know her from. I
I've
love
seen her.
her.
Yep.
And then this one episode of Next Generation. She only has 41 credits, surprisingly.
Yeah, I'm surprised there were that few because she looks so familiar. But
Yeah,
probably
I
because
think
the
it's
Waltons.
Waltons. She just did so
Yeah.
many episodes of The Waltons.
Yeah.
And she plays essentially the same character as The Waltons.
Yeah.
Personality-wise, even if her hobbies are quite different.
Mhm. Her hair.
She rubs me the wrong way because she's so confident and so wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
But to be fair, I mean, historically, that would be a white man's role, and it's a little bit refreshing that it's not a white man doing the total wrong confidence, and it's a woman in this case. But I do like right away that she rules out that he's not a demon or a spirit. That's what we would have thought we were basic before we understood everything we don't understand now about elements. But yeah, that confidence of he's an Iceman. It actually makes sense on the surface. It's just like, have you never encountered people from that region or animals? I feel like there'd be some travelers on this planet. There are on most planets, I would think.
They end up calling him Jaden. And the
Sure.
Fashion show people said that's where Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, that's how they ended up naming their son, is from the same way the Data got named here on this planet.
As soon as they open the pouch that says radioactive, obviously with the radioactive, we know what it is.
Right.
I feel like you didn't need the word radioactive. That was almost too on the nose because the fact that the metal was warm and we know what the mission was enough. But yeah, the whole warm metal, and as soon as they're like hitting with an anvil and stuff, I'm like, I know that's not what releases it, but stop handling it. I was just like, it made me so uncomfortable.
I like that the radioactive container also looked like one of those little toolboxes, one of the modern tool.
It doesn't seal very well. You just kind of flip it over and wrap it around like a pouch. And she does say not only is Data an Iceman, but there are definitely ferocious creatures in the mountains that we've never seen, but we know they're there. Yeti, it just makes sense that Yetis would exist on this alien planet in terms of their development. It did strike me as interesting in this episode that Data essentially admits he believes in heaven. Because she's like, if you can imagine like an afterlife or whatever, and he's like, yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I'm like, really?
Well, maybe he can imagine one. Maybe he doesn't believe in one, but he can imagine one.
Actually,
I wish I remembered the exact dialogue, but yeah.
I took that scene as him having some vague memory or feeling about the Enterprise. I think that's what I kind of got the feeling of, that's the place like heaven.
And
he's in a place he wants to get back to.
I think it was definitely the implication. I got it at that level, but then the literal part of me was like, come on, be atheist. Don't be. Just because I want Data to be like me. I want everybody to just stop believing in God. We have the holodeck test with Troy, and she's in engineering, which I would think the command test will be on the bridge. I think she could have the same conversation from the bridge, but not aside.
Yeah.
It seems really weird that Worf and Geordi are not there, but the holodeck took the time to create recreations of them, because I feel like either you get your close friends, command staff, to participate in the test, which would make sense, or you have some generic holograms that are the same on every ship, no matter where you serve, that are on the test. The argument against what I just said is the later scene where she has to sacrifice. She has to be sacrificing somebody she knows to actually mean more, to be a better test. So I'm only, I guess, answering my own question in a certain way. It just seems like it was a lot of effort to make Worf and Geordi holograms, whereas I prefer the Kobayashi Maru test in Wrath of Khan, where all the command staff just jumps on the bridge for Saavik, even though they don't give a crap who this cadet is, and do it for her.
Yeah.
Worf and Geordi could take 5 minutes off and do the test.
I wrote early on, is this a Kobayashi Maru, which I guess it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, yeah.
I mean, they addressed that right away, Stephen, because she's like, is this one of those tests where there's no answer? And Riker's like, nope, there's an answer. And you're like, yeah, that's speaking to the fans that know the Kobayashi Maru.
Well, and I guess and to be fair, when she's like, well, you did it wrong. She's like, well, how? And he's like, I can't say it. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then it's like later, it's like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I mean, it's still weird, but it's a good test, but it's kind of simple, but I don't know.
As soon as he said, I can't tell you, I knew the test wasn't about the actual engineering knowledge and it was about something else. So I think she should have figured that out a little sooner too, because she's been Starfleet a long time. So that's not necessarily the answer, but I feel like Riker's saying that. I can't give you the clue. Should have been a clue to her.
Yeah. And eventually she figures it out, right? And so I wrote my alternate episode was that Troy, in the spirit of the Kobayashi Maru, rigs the test, and within it, she orders everyone to their deaths, and then she quits. And then, everyone to their death, and like, take that, Riker. By the way, I'm out of here. That's what I wanted, including Riker. She orders him.
Of course.
I also thought there was some neat thematic cohesion with the fact that the way Geordi was going to die was he was going to be irradiated, which kind of ties into the radiation thing on the planet. I thought that was kind
Didn't even notice. Neat. That's awesome. Great observation.
And I guess the idea of the test, and that's and what just got me thinking, like, man, the AI level on this holodeck is amazing. That Geordi's the only guy who could fix it in this scenario, who could possibly get in there and fix it, as opposed to, I don't know. I guess, either way, how do you decide who died?
Right? That is a little bit of a weakness, though, that Riker basically says, well, he says outright, like, if you take it again, it's going to be harder the next time, but it's the same scenario. It's not harder. Right. So what's he mean it's going to be harder if they don't change up what's going wrong with the ship?
Yeah.
They were just psyching her out a little bit.
I guess. He could have been. I mean, that's totally within Riker's mischievous personality, which is why he's one of my favorite people on that ship. But yeah. Back to the surface, our friend Talor is teaching the kids that there are 4 elements in every object. She goes into Avatar: The Last Airbender, earth, wind, fire, water stuff. And they're all present in this stick. And then Data speaks up and corrects her. First of all, I love that they just stuck Data in a class of elementary school students for babysitting purposes. But second of all, I like that, I kind of like the glimpse that his memory is coming back in a certain extent, but then at the same time, his memory isn't coming back. It's just he has scientific knowledge. And that's part of my problem with this episode, is it just doesn't make the memory holes just don't make sense to me the way they're portrayed, both in this and at the end.
Yeah, it is that thing of like, well, I know all of these things, but yet and I guess, with the human brain, they never know, when you kind of like this, or the classic comedy where you get conked on the head and you forget everything, but get conked again, it all comes back. in real life brain injuries, they never know. Sometimes they understand a little bit, but so I guess even with a data brain, it's hard to say what. But still, it does seem inconsistent.
I wonder what caused his memory loss to begin with. Was it the radiation from the parts, or when he first arrives, his uniform is torn and his hair's all messed up. So apparently something physically happened to him as well. Maybe he fell down the mountain
They said there was a power surge or something when he messed with a piece of equipment. They mentioned it at the end of the episode.
Oh, okay. Oh, they did mention. Okay.
Yeah. I still don't think that was a good explanation. Honestly, I guess my brain is conditioned because of 90s and 60s, 70s, 80s sitcoms to believe if you get hit on the head, your brain can selectively have amnesia. But for some reason, taking that same flawed logic and applying it to an android offends me because it's like, no, that's not how a computer works. Whereas if this was Geordi on the planet, he got bumped on the head, I'd accept it. And so, that's a double standard for me because I don't think this is more ridiculous than the coconut on the head, but at the same time, because it's data.
I tried to think of it as when my computer locks up because it's ancient, and then when I have to reboot it, some stuff comes right back, and some stuff saved, and some stuff did not. So I guess maybe it's like that a little bit, but I still doesn't feel the same way as you overall. But that's the way I ended up reconciling it in my head. Just to back up a little bit. That anvil falls on that guy, literally. And, Data Jaden / Data picks it up. There's clearly no OSHA on this world. They're that primitive.
No, not yet.
No. Yeah.
Let's talk about who the anvil falls on. That's Skaran, played by Mike Haggerty, the great Mike Haggerty.
Yes.
Very familiar face. You might know him from, according to IMDb, Somebody Somewhere, Overboard, 5 episodes of Friends, and 1 episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. But he has 115 credits. He's been in so many. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Shameless.
He was a super on Friends. He played a reporter in So I Married an Axe Murderer. And in the Raincoats episode of Seinfeld as a guy buying clothes, and then I think it's Kramer and Frank Costanza drop off some clothes, but they have moths in them, so they eat a bunch of the guy's clothes, so he doesn't have any more clothes. Mike Haggerty played that part too. But yeah, in the 90s, he was everywhere. And always a
he did cool 13 episodes of Lucky Louie. Super familiar. Austin Powers, he was the peanut vendor.
Oh, yes. Yeah, always a fun guy.
Love him. He voiced a bartender in the video game Star Trek Klingon. So this wasn't his only Trek credit. Star Trek Klingon's a really fun whatever game. And he also was in the 2nd episode of The Next Generation. He was in an episode of season 5 as Captain Larg in Redemption Part 2. So he played a Klingon previously in the Klingon Civil War.
And he just passed away, right? Or was it 2016 maybe?
2016 was 6 years ago, Stephen. So that was... he passed away in 2022. Okay. I understand that
that's
all
better.
Our time has been spent for the last
I guess
5
that's
years,
better.
So.
But,
he passed away literally last year. Unfortunately, a great character actor. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The anvil on his foot. So we get Data investigating it, and they immediately come to the realization that Data is the cause, and Data's, of course, wanting to look into that more because he's not going to take that face value.
Right.
But this was another thing. If Data's got his logic and scientific reasoning, shouldn't he think about the radioactive materials? Because it happened at the same time he came about. What else came about at the same time he came about? The rocks. And to me, the logical Data I know and love would have made that leap so much quicker.
It's
not me. It's the other thing that showed up at the same time and is interacting with the same people.
Well, because when they start we're going to come after you with our torches and pitchforks, he's kind of like, well, but, these other things are happening then too. And it's like, you're almost there. You're almost there. You're right. It's right there. But yeah, he eventually gets there, but
he does. It just takes him longer than it should take Data.
Yeah. CTE, he's in concussion protocol. So it takes a little while, even for androids.
I did really appreciate at this part of the episode, as he's explaining things to Lore, she suddenly comes around and starts. I mean, she doesn't dismiss him out of hand. She doesn't dismiss any of his experiments. She looks into it and actually seems to get on board with him.
Yeah.
I give major props because there are definitely scientists or public figures who espouse science that talk the talk and then don't walk the walk. And my assumption about her when we met her was she was going to be one of those people whose beliefs are so strongly held, she can't bend them for anything. No, she was willing to bend. And I love that. I love that this wasn't a static character, that she was actually a complex character.
Yeah, she'll probably go down in history on that planet as the inventor of the microscope as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that whatever. I just wrote down what a cool microscope, Jaden. Yeah, I thought it was very cool. Like,
I'm sure she'll take credit for
it. She should.
Yeah, I
mean, he's dead, so it doesn't matter to him. We had an adorable little girl. We'll mention, we haven't talked about her yet much. Gia, played by Kimberly Cullum, who is best known for 2 episodes of Quantum Leap, the movie Maverick, 1994 film with Mel Gibson, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where she's listed as additional crew. For The Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2, she's listed as additional crew, so I'm guessing she now doesn't act, she does more crew stuff.
I think her acting career was very short-lived.
Looks like her last credit was 98 for acting credits. Yeah, it's just a handful of guest spots. But I thought she was a very believable little girl. I thought she was cute and charming and gave this episode what it needed with the connection with Data, the simplistic, but also wise beyond her years. I really liked the guest stars in this episode, like all of them. I don't think there was a weak link in the guest stars. That's what I'm saying.
She also brings a connection to something else, too. Did you guys notice a hint of Frankenstein?
That's where I was going. We were going the same place.
All right.
Yes, I did. Yes. Because I referenced the torches and the pitchforks. Yeah,
I noticed that.
Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein was the doctor.
Well, we were just referencing the book itself. You know, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, of course.
And I think that too is why they really needed to use Data on the planet. Like Geordi couldn't have pulled off the Frankenstein thing like Data did when he gets his face damaged and looks like a scary monster. So that, but yeah, they have like three points of reference to Frankenstein: the medieval village, the little girl, and like you said, the pitchforks and torches. And so, that was intentional too. By the way.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and I always love when we see inside Data. I thought this was a cool use of that too.
Me too. In fact, I've thought about doing a video where I just piece together all the different little trap doors and whatnot in his head. See if any of them accidentally overlap or it just they really got almost carried away with all the different parts of his head that would open up.
At some point he's talking to them and he's still missing that part of his face or whatever. I just kept looking at it like, how did they do this? And I was trying to figure out like
it's definitely caked on top of his face.
And that's where I laid it. It was like they did it and then they did that as an attachment. But
yeah, it looked like he had some swelling going on there.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite Data looks is this Exo-6 model from First Contact, where half of his face has been like burned off. You don't see the water, not burned. It's like skin, like human skin. I love that look.
Yeah, this was the first time in 3. That was the second time of 3 where that part of his face gets damaged. I think it happens again in Insurrection. I think that half of his face is damaged a third time.
They just love in the films to rip off half his face. Well, they had the budget to make it look so much better in the films, whereas this, it looks like LED Christmas lights. Just a piece of...
Well, and it also gets into, because he's not sure what's going on either when that happens, and it gets into the whole, like, we've been talking for the whole run about the Pinocchio part of he wants to be a boy or whatever, a boy, and in this instance, he doesn't know any different. He just knows, there's something weird going on. I don't know what that is, but...
Yeah. Also, I wanted to reference Pen Pals as well, too, which was another episode where...
Him and the little girl, Yeah,
and directed by the same guy as well. So they tagged...
Was that a Winrich Colby as well?
Yep.
Nice. Yep. Yeah. He had to have done dozens of episodes because we see his name a lot on this show.
Yeah, he was one of the big directors.
Yeah. While we're talking about behind the scenes, this was story by Christopher Hatton, who's best known as a producer and director. He actually has 9 writing credits, this being his first one. Well, he did two Next Gen episodes. So Gambit Part 1, where Picard was undercover as the archaeologist. He has a story by, and then this. But he's also written for, I don't even recognize any of these credits. Robotropolis, Battle of the Dam, Saving Gula, Raven's Hollow. He's directed some of these as well. But then the teleplay itself was by our good friend Ron D. Moore, that we've discussed ad nauseum. Troy fails again, and Riker cancels the test because she's failed 3 times. Why do you think he cancels? Do you think it's really to spur her with that comment about your first use of the ship, or do you think he really thinks she just doesn't have it in her? Or is he just trying to spare the pain? I'm not entirely clear on why he cancels it at this point.
In watching it in the moment, I thought it was, I don't want to keep watching you fail. It hurts too much. In the moment, that's what I thought.
I could see that.
Part of the reason why he should have recused himself of
Yeah. Once again, yeah.
And I didn't blame him for his directness because he wasn't harsh. He wasn't overly harsh.
Right.
And he told her from the beginning, like, friend hat off, judge hat on. I can't treat you differently. I think she understood that, and I will say, and I think this is probably more writing than acting fault, but there are times where it feels like Troy emotionally can't draw that line, and it's like, dude, you know what you signed up for. I'm sorry, you can't be mad at him for this. You just can't. It's not fair. He told you. He was very clear.
That's a really good point that you just brought up. Actually, I didn't even think about her empathic abilities. It seems like she should have been able to read what he was all about. You know, if he was trying to spur her on, seems like she should have sensed that, especially with him, because as I recall from Encounter at Farpoint, with him, she's actually telepathic. They could be in each other's minds. So
somewhat. Their history definitely makes them more connected than most people, but I think we've also established in the past, and maybe this is me bringing novels into it because I've read a ton of the Star Trek novels, but she can kind of shut that off at will. Like, she can choose not to read his mind.
No pun intended.
I think there's been lines of dialogue though too, where she said, like, or he's like, stop reading my mind. She's like, I wasn't. Like, she has to choose to use that empathic ability. She can choose not to. And I think her sense of morality and rightness would lead her to not cheat on the test in any way.
Yeah. Her ethic.
Yeah. Right. But his line about first duty is to the ship, when he cites that as a reason for a cancellation, part of me thinks the cancellation was just to spur her to act. And that was her clue, and knowing she'd get the clue, especially because of the gracious way he came in when she passed, that I kind of think he was just trying to lead her to it as much as he could without actually holding her hand.
I think so too.
Which is cheating a little bit, right? He's not as firm with the moral line as she is. She would have never crossed that. She would never bent that rule the way he did.
He gave her a hint.
His congratulations seemed heartfelt, but I do think the whole moment of ordering Geordi to his death was underplayed, and I think it should have been more dramatic. I think it should have been more, it should have hit harder.
Yeah.
And then she almost acted like he betrayed her by making her do that, which sucked.
You're
Again,
right. The moment does feel like she's just filling in C on an exam, you know, rather than literally actually ordering her friends.
And how dare you make me fill in C?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I think that was writing rather than acting. I think she's proven she can act. I think this was bad. This was a failure of the writing. Could have also been a product of the times. Ron D. Moore was still a young and experienced writer at this point. He was pretty green when he came onto Star Trek, and just it didn't quite work there for me.
I have a question about the ending too. She tells Data that he'll have to call her sir. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but does that, when she got her promotion there, did that give her a higher rank than Data then?
Yeah, Data's a lieutenant commander, and now she's a full commander. She's got 3 solid pips. He's got 2 solid and a hollow.
But then would that make her then the second officer on the ship if she's a higher rank?
That's an excellent point. So Riker, Crusher, and Troy are all commanders by now, by the end of this episode, because Crusher was already a commander. But I think the chain of command operates a little bit differently. Kind of like if you're talking federal government, president vice president, speaker of the House. There are probably senators that you would consider equivalent, or Supreme Court justices you would consider equivalent in power to the speaker of the House, but that chain of command. And I think in terms of the Enterprise, and this is just me pulling crap out of my butt, so don't believe me at face value, but I really think it was established that while her and Crusher both have commander ranks, they also are in separate departments and heads of their departments, even though we never see another counselor, but they have their own duties, whereas Data's duty is being third in that line.
Right. Yeah, she's not in the command chain.
Right. He's chief of operations.
Yeah.
Which is essentially O'Brien's job on DS9, which O'Brien's role feels more like chief engineer than chief of operations, but essentially Data and O'Brien have the same job. It's very odd, especially because O'Brien's non-commissioned and so much lower ranked.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that, actually. I thought he was the chief engineer over there. I didn't realize.
They say a number of times he's chief of operations.
Yeah, interesting.
Which Data is the operations officer, so it's not. He's never called chief, but I assume it's the equivalent job. Of course, Space Station, we know people with lower ranks can fill the same jobs. Commander instead of captain in charge,
Yep.
Because they don't have any, Commodores. They don't have any Commodores, apparently, by this era. Original series, lots of Commodores.
Yeah, they went to Admirals. Yeah.
Admiral?
Well, I always thought Commodore was a step between Captain and Admiral.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
And they just seem to, by the 24th century, eliminate Commodores from Star Trek, which is disappointing to me.
I think they were like fleet commanders or something, right? They were something like that. But then again, you have Commodore Decker, who was he was in command of the ship.
Yeah.
So, and I was going to say, just real quick about Data being the chief, the operations officer. The reason for that was because Data didn't look good in blue. It was originally going to be the science officer, just like Spock was, but they had to change the color of his uniform. I actually cover that in my videos. Yeah, that
Interesting.
Nice.
And also the reason too why they switched the operations and command uniforms. Gold, of course, being command in the original, and then red in the Next Generation, was because of Patrick Stewart. He didn't look good in gold.
Huh.
So they gave him red, and they just switched the costumes up to match the actors, which I think is kind of neat. It's interesting. It shows really where they've got their priorities, as far as being a show goes, instead of being actual Starfleet.
Now, not to get too far in the weeds, you probably already know this. The original gold uniforms were actually green. They just looked gold on television.
Yeah, the lighting.
Yeah.
It made him look gold. It's funny because he actually has a green tunic as well, which looks
right.
The wraparound
It's a greener tunic.
Yeah.
It must have been a different type of fabric, because was it velour or veneer or not?
Yeah.
But velour, was that what it was? The fabric?
I'm not sure, but we love the wraparound.
Yeah, I actually have that wraparound shirt. I wear.
Oh, yeah.
I shouldn't say I wear it from time to time. I wear it for costume things, but I always love that shirt.
I've got a gold.
It was much comfier than Picard's variations.
Yeah.
Yep. And he complained, didn't he, that Kirk had two uniforms and he only had one, so they gave him the coat.
Gave him a second one.
And the gray shirt to go along with it.
So back to the planet. Data demonstrates Imperial reasoning and sends her to gather stuff, and she doesn't object at all. So that was really nice.
She says, I think it's around there where she says, and I want to examine your data in detail. It's like,
Yes, I got that as well. That was funny.
Oh, yeah, that was one of two, actually, references to names. They reference Geordi in a way, too. I think they mentioned the Forge. This was Forge.
Yeah.
This was, not forged in any Forge that I know of her. But, I noticed they referenced Geordi and Data in the dialogue.
And yet it didn't spark his memory. That's lame.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
Me too. When his skin tears off, there's so many little fragile wires exposed, and none of them rip or get broken.
Right. It was just a perfect shot.
I wonder if he glows in the dark in a real dark room. Yeah, that's like it was really close to the surface there. That you should be able to see it through his skin.
Yeah.
We do appreciate that even when they've all turned on Data and they're pitchforking him, they still follow his advice and gather up the metal and put it in the satchel. And I don't know if that's a testament to how much they trust Talor or how much it's like, well, let's just cover all our bases. But at least they still protected themselves. The Data showing Gia his face, that was definitely a Frankenstein scene for sure.
Yeah.
The whole scene where he's going to pour stuff in the well is so overly dramatic and so overly, I don't know, it just didn't work.
Like filler, I felt too. That he, why didn't he just pour that in there real quick instead of taking his time?
Uh-huh.
It would have never happened on a modern television show that he took his time.
It was like I think we referenced this a few weeks back. The guy who gets run over by the steamroller in Austin Powers. It's like, I'm going to put this in here. Who's going to, don't try to stop me. Yeah.
One of the weird things about the episode, if you don't mind me saying, with mentioning the well and that being the only source of water, when they say it was like 200, was it salars or whatever their measurement?
Sultans away,
away. I thought that was actually very odd because almost every town, village, city has some sort of waterway near them. As why they build them where they do is because of the waterways. It's a way of transporting goods and people. And I just thought that was really odd that they were so far away from any body of water. It didn't seem logical.
It made it very convenient.
Yeah,
all they had to do was put it in there. Yeah,
great point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because it's not like I'm thinking of Batman or one of the Batmans where they're just going to put it all in the drinking water. Maybe it's Batman Returns, and they're going to put it, but down at the water treatment plant rather than water.
Right? Yeah, there was a reservoir and all that. Yep.
This leads me to my one question, at least one of my questions I have. I think we've talked about this before in all these years, especially with similar episodes. It feels like all the planets they go to. I know we've talked about it's because of either a crazy captain or these are the sets they had and these are the costumes they had, so it has to be set in the past, like the Sub Rosa, for that matter. It was like somebody's writing a Scotland episode. It's going to happen. Are all these planets always in the past? Does that make sense in the sense of, in one way it makes sense because, well, if they weren't primitive, then they'd be flying around the stars too. But, this is the Star Wars part of the podcast. I always think of Coruscant and in Star Wars, it's advanced planet. It's just one giant city. I feel like we see the advanced city, the advanced planets less than we see the primitive planets.
I think you're onto something though, that they're out flying around too, so there's no reason to visit their world necessarily. Like we're encountering them in space, and we know the super advanced planets are like godlike now, and we've encountered those races too. So we've got a range.
Yeah.
So I think there are more primitive planets that they go to. Actually, it seems than advanced ones. And I think, again, I think like you were saying, it's a lot of that's for budgetary reasons, and also probably for commentary reasons too.
Yeah.
It reminds us of a period of our past or whatever that gives them the ability then to make social commentary or historical or political commentary in a way.
Yeah.
And thankfully, in most of these episodes, they've cut the end scene where they find the Constitution of the United States fully intact. Such a terrible original series ending. But so Beverly and Riker beam down. They're disguised as the aliens with the drawn on stick figures on their head, which makeup-wise, I appreciate they didn't mess with the prosthetics. Just draw a little stick figure on your head and you're good.
Yeah. Speaking of modern, it gave me a modern, and not necessarily a political reference, but it kind of is. But and the Fashion and Soap folks were like, they said their favorite aliens are where they just have one little thing on the face differently than the rest of them. But I thought they all looked like Giuliani at that Four Seasons or whatever when he had his hair dye was running down his face. I thought they all kind of looked like that. It was better organized, but it's still, that's what I thought of when I saw it. So yeah, actually all my remaining notes are fashion notes. I really loved our woman Talur's hair. It looked like Madame Curie's.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was supposed to, but it reminded me of that. I thought the skin rash makeup was good too, and that's what made me start thinking of Miri, because the Miri makeup I remember kind of freaking me out as a kid, and I thought that was really well done here. we, like you said, those two going down on the planet, Riker and Crusher, and of course looking fantastic in this getup. We love it whenever, as much as I just said, enough with the old planets or whatever, the primitive planet. When our people get dressed up that way, I enjoy it. And then this is completely off topic, and maybe this might change one of my answers later, but there is a guy in about the time they beam down and they're doing the establishing shot of here are all the other people hanging out. There's a guy in what I would call the first pair of yoga pants. The guy looks great. So good for him. Yeah. Speaking of older episodes like Bread and Circus, I think it was Bread and Circus. Good job, buddy. You look good in those. They look like yoga pants. So.
And my other fashion note was Riker's casual wear, which was like lounge wear. Looked great, and like he was going to seduce and have a woman over.
That's where the fashion show people went. Yep.
Which for Riker, women probably often come to him. So
well,
he's
again, that's why my door was open. Womp, womp, all that stuff. So.
They buried Data near the well, even though there's no like ground to dig in, so they have to like build a monument. Just take it to the edge of town and bury him, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
But then when they beam him out secretly and they fix him, he's still wearing the clothes. Nobody thought to like, you're repairing his body. You didn't take the clothes off to get it out of the way. And then if you're going to put anything back on, put on a uniform or leave him bare chested. Right. Like it just doesn't make sense. They still wear the clothes.
They even had the hole in the back of his jacket.
Makes no sense.
That's funny.
And then, that last note I have is just the amnesia thing didn't work. You got to explain it. You got to justify it. And you didn't. And the fact that at the end he doesn't remember his experience on the planet, it sucks. I mean, it'd be one thing if it would be more believable and better if they just fixed his memory and he got all his memory back than saying, I got all my memory back before this incident. Now I've lost this incident. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Jordy or somebody goes in and is like, oh yeah, I found where this was stored. Click, 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 or whatever. And
right.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I did want to make one fashion note too. This is the last time that we see Troy in her purple. And I think it's like the only time we see her after Chain of Command, where she was ordered by Jericho to wear her uniform. And at that point, she wears it straight through. I imagine they had her in this beginning of this episode because she was on the shuttlecraft, so she was able to wear her casual wear again at the very beginning of the episode. Yeah. But then you see her back in her uniform. But yeah, that's the last time they pull that out. And it's also...
And to really hammer home the plot of moving from this counselor position into a command position.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's good point too. It's also the last time we see Riker playing his trombone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Until Star Trek Lower Decks.
Into the Next Generation. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I know we've seen him play it as an animated character. So
and we mean playing his trombone in the literal sense.
The literal sense. Yes,
sense.
Stephen. Yeah. We're keeping our clean rating on this episode as we always do. We are not an explicit podcast. Any other notes before we get to the rankings?
There's one more thing I'd like to say.
Sure.
So one of the things that I've always been interested in, and I do this in my videos, I like to look up etymology, name meanings, and because I'm not only am I a video editor and maker, but I also like to write as well. And so for me, names have meaning, and naming characters and planets is different than naming your children. There's actually usually some kind of meaning or reason why they did that. And the name of the planet, Barkan 4, I did some research. I just wanted to share it real quick because it's thematically connected to some of what is going on in the episode. So Barkan, when you trace it back, goes back to barrel. It means barrel hill. And a barrow, of course, being like a wheelbarrow to carry, which references what Data was doing at the beginning. He was carrying those rocks from the hill or the mountain. But it also means hill or mound or grave mound or mountain. And it's also the mound that's erected over a grave. So you have Data's grave with the grave marker, a mountain, and it's originally comes from Icelandic. It's an Icelandic word from the saga of Greta the Strong. So I was wondering if maybe that's where they got the Iceman connection. From the Icelandic connection of the word, or if that's where they got the word from. I don't know, which comes first, but I just wanted to share that. That was kind of an interesting, just to show the different levels of meaning and depth that Star Trek has. It's very polysemic and has a lot of different levels of meaning to it.
Very cool.
Very interesting.
Yeah, we moved past Regula and some of the Orion and all that stuff. And TOS, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing I had, we didn't talk about one of the guest stars. Garvin was played by Michael Rothgar, or Rothar, best known for The Nutty Professor, the 96 Eddie Murphy movie. One episode of Modern Family and one episode of Eli Stone. So mostly a guest actor. He has 60 credits. Again, I didn't think there were weak links in the guest stars on this episode. So he's also a guest player, but I liked that character. And I was disappointed at the end when we saw everybody healed. We didn't see him again because I really wanted to see if his hair grew back that quickly or if he was going to be like a little more decimated than the rest of them. But
yeah, we never saw him again after he was pretty much bald. And that was sort of disappeared.
Yeah, probably just so you don't have to deal with that. But
so there was a plug actually I wanted to do real quick on one of my shorts that
do it.
After we had talked about the actress being in the Waltons, which I initially looked familiar but didn't know where she was from. I actually, one of my shorts, I did a version. It's called I can't remember what I named it, but it's basically the Star Trek meets the Waltons. Where at the end of every Waltons episode, they all say goodnight.
Oh yeah.
And so I have if you go check it out, it's not very long. It's one of the shorts. I have them all on their in the intercoms with the whistle going off. Them, Kirk saying goodnight to Spock and to McCoy, and they're all saying goodnight to each other. And then it's just kind of a cute little thing. It's like, what if Star Trek ended like the Waltons? What it
nice.
Is. So kind of fun.
Awesome. I like that. Yeah, the channel's youtube.com. Your username is Metatrek.
Mm-hmm.
And looks like you have 40 videos and over 5,000 subscribers. Nice.
Thank you. Yeah. I also am on Instagram at Metatrek Videos. I do have a Patreon page as well. Metatrek on Patreon. So
yeah, I see patreon.com/Metatrek, and there is a free trial at the commander level for 7 days. So
nice.
Yeah, come check it out. Maybe I shouldn't be broadcasting this too much, but I do fan edits. And in fact, I think I'm going to do a fan edit of Thine Own Self, where I just some of the edits I do just to sort of see what it would be like from the viewpoint of the crew, So sometimes, like the episode where they think Data is dead, but he's actually been kidnapped. I do an edit of that where it just follows the crew trying to figure it out with no idea that he's actually alive. And that actually holds up pretty well right to the very end. It kind of falls apart in the last scene. It just there's a jump of logic or time. But anyway, I do. That's one of the things I publish over there that I can't publish anywhere else because it's behind a firewall, or not a firewall, but a paywall.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that I'm also doing deeper videos there too. So my deeper content I'm keeping on there, and I'm doing lighter stuff on YouTube.
Let's get to the rankings. How was your annoyance this week?
Those townspeople with their torches and pitchforks and other sharp implements.
I mean, I agree with you. I'm going to be specific and say Scoran, the blacksmith. And he just would not even take a second to stop and hear a reason. Even though he did obey in putting the rocks in the pouch and didn't throw a fit, they took the rocks he paid for from him.
Yeah, that was probably the most annoying part of the episode for me too, was the action and reaction of the villagers. But I guess it was part of what they were going for. I felt like it was sort of shoehorned in to it, but beyond that, I've really enjoyed it. I'd give it probably a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I would similarly rate it around there. Yeah. So for your annoyance, would you say all the villagers or a specific villager?
I'd say mostly, the blacksmith.
Yeah.
Yep. He was the most annoying. Also, I can't remember her name now. The lady from the Waltons. She was.
Lure.
There you go. Yeah, she was
Yeah.
somewhat annoying too, but not as much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she was a little more reasonable. But
She came around.
yeah, yep.
Who are we having a drink with?
I mentioned my buddy in the yoga pants, but I'm going to stick with Troy just because congratulations, you did it. So
I was going to say, I need to have a drink with Troy too, just a toast of her accomplishment. And also, after ordering Jordy to his death, I think she needs a drink. So we're going to have to send forward.
Let's see. Probably Data.
Data.
Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Yeah, it would be because he can get drunk. At least he can be affected by chemicals, right? Because he was
As Yar well knows.
yeah, and he was roofied by his brother Lore.
That's true.
yeah. I imagine having a drink with Data after this episode would be like the Chris Farley show. Now I'm just referencing old SNL sketches where it's like, hey, do you remember that part where this happened? And he'd be like, no, I don't. It's wiped out. Well, what about this? Nope, it's gone.
I wonder if he remembers his walk from the mountains to the village, since that was like the only thing he remembered leading up to that, and the village part was erased after. So maybe we could get some interesting stories on his trek through was it across the desert? I always had a feeling it felt like a desert, but maybe it was a forest. I don't know.
That's a good question. Yeah, in my
They
mind,
talked
it was
about a forest.
it was more desert to me. And I had desert mountainous, deserty Utah kind of a thing. Yeah.
Kind of like where Picard and Wesley crash.
Yes.
When Picard's trying to take Wesley to yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of image.
Yeah, absolutely. Ranking the episode, let's start with Parallels. Better or worse than Parallels, the one where Worf's slipping realities.
I like Parallels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too. I think I probably dug that better because it was kind of different.
Yeah, I think I'd go below that as well. This was a good episode, but I think Parallels was a little bit more, I don't know. I liked it a little bit more. Below that in our rankings is Liaisons.
That's an interesting one to compare to, since the B story and this one was actually written for Liaisons. Like here.
Right.
So there was an annoyance level on that one too, of course, with with Worf and the guy that was trying to pick a fight with him. And some of what went on the planet was, I guess, was a little annoying too. It seemed like contrived to a degree, but I think I would say I like this one better than Liaisons.
It might be recency bias, but I agree with you. I would put it above.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how much we like Liaisons. I think
We've
we
ranked
did.
number 4 of 15 so far
Okay.
this season.
Yeah. I'll cast a contrarian vote in defeat nonetheless to go lower.
Okay. Well, you're out on your own, so we're going to leave it there in the rankings. But for my curiosity, Stephen, below that we have Gambit Part 2.
Ooh.
Followed closely behind my Gambit Part 1.
I think it fits in around there because I felt like that was a very it might be recency bias. So I'm at this point because what's below those two?
Inheritance.
Hard stop there.
Viola Flanagan. So you put somewhere in the Gambit range. So just a little lower than where we ended up putting it. Okay. Okay. Well, next week, Deep Space Nine Paradise. Cisco and Chief O'Brien discover a colony which lives without technology. So kind of like this, only without the amnesia.
Paradise is everywhere.
Live
Paradise
long.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Yep. And live long and I can't remember. Oh, and prosper.
Peace and long life.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?